Welcome, everybody, to Liberal Tears on Tap Live, streaming to you live from X and YouTube. How are you doing tonight, Kimmy?
I'm doing great, Jay. Just want to make sure you can hear me.
I got you loud and clear.
All right. Thank you so much.
Yeah, excited
Excited for
about this
this.
one today. Got Kansas governor candidate Doug Billings joining us here shortly, and really exciting times. You know, we're kind of ramping up things, you know, with promoting conservative candidates again. You know, we kind of laid off that a little bit here on X, took a little break, did some different types of spaces or whatever, but we're back into politics mode. So we're trying to promote these good candidates, get them out there, get them some name recognition for 2026. So it's a really exciting time.
Exactly. I just want to read a comment from Jerry from Ohio. They should have called the Gulf of America the Gulf of Liberal Tears.
yeah, that's awesome. Yeah,
yeah. Thank you, Andrew, for reposting. Thank you guys for being here. Appreciate y'all.
I got one of my favorite shirts on.
0% liberal.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah. I hope you had a good Sunday. It's been rainy down here in Georgia. You got my pit bull here. She's coming to join us for our live stream. But yeah, we're just trying to get these candidates out there, trying to help Doug out. He's going to be a fantastic governor for Kansas. They're really struggling up there with their current governor. A lot of issues and stuff, and a lot of unnecessary things. So if we get a good conservative in there, that he can really help things out.
Exactly. And in my opinion, and your opinion, we've always said this, that Doug Billings will be the best governor of the United States of America.
No, for sure. Yeah. And yeah, we have so few really strong conservative governors right now too. And I've said that Governor DeSantis is currently the best one out there. So I see Doug, he's entering in here, so we'll add him up to the stage. Welcome to the stage, Doug. How you doing?
Hey, this is pretty damn cool. Thank you for this.
Yeah, of course. You got a nice setup there, man.
Well, this is the set of the show. I feel right at home.
Looking good, man.
Kimmy, there's a rule. Turn on that damn camera. Kimmy, I'm just halfway teasing.
Not today. Not today, Doug. Ain't happening.
Hey, thanks, you guys. I love you both. And if Barbie, whoever else is helping us today, thank you for this. This is great.
And we're so happy.
Yeah, we got Kelly joining us here too.
Hi, Kelly. Thank you for helping.
Hi, good to see you.
How does it act with how does this thing work with the audience, Jay? Do they just type in questions, or do they get to come up on stage like in X Spaces, or how does this work?
Nope, it's just by invite only, but they can post comments, which I actually screwed up on the last one we did. I wasn't really paying attention to them, but my screen is a little bit different than everybody else's because I'm running everything back here, but they can comment to it. We're live on YouTube and on X. So, and then we also upload this to Rumble too. So we'll be on 3 different platforms.
What a dang, that's just night and day different. Wow. Good job.
Yeah. Yep. And we got 500 in here watching right now, over 500. So, yeah, just really excited. I was reading some things about your current governor and some of the issues up there. And, I'm just thinking about what a difference you would be in that position. I've seen some of the things in terms of like the Medicaid expansion that she's trying for and some of the other stuff too. And really, on the surface, they make it seem like they're trying to help people and stuff like that. But really, the Medicaid expansion, I would assume has to do with illegals and stuff like that. And, not really helping, your grandma or whatever. It's really, these underlying issues that they're trying to push, this wokeness and stuff like that, and just really not helping out Americans, which we see a lot from a lot of politicians, which is unfortunate. And so I know that you're a completely different type of person, and you'll fight that type of stuff.
Yeah, you're right, Jay. So when you're mentioning Governor Laura Kelly, who is one of the many commu socialists in office throughout the republic. The Democrat Party, and for those of you out there who are new and are hearing me for the first time, the Democrat Party does not exist anymore. I mean, there's evidence of the obvious. They have blended communism and socialism together. Laura Kelly and the other communist socialists, whenever they start to bemoan or complain about Medicaid, Medicare, and what they want to do with it, and how the big, beautiful new bill is crippling those kinds of platforms for Americans, what they're talking about, and Jay, you're exactly right, is that we are crippling those kinds of platforms for illegal immigrants. Thank you very much. And for people who have committed fraud and who aren't real, or, it's the same thing we see with the election integrity issues to a degree when we talk about inflated voter registration rolls. There's dead people, people born in 1827 who are still voting in 2026. So it's that kind of thing that they're moaning about, because it whittles away at this really massive and ingenious, although evil, ingenious scheme that they've been building for these last 7, 8, 10 decades. And that is, how do we steal elections, and how do we make sure that our side wins in perpetuity to avoid any kind of contest that's real, legitimate, or transparent. So yeah, she's complaining about that. The big, beautiful new bill is just one example. There's others, but in Kansas, we have a problem with that. You may have also heard that not only in Kansas but in other states, SNAP or food stamps, there's fraud, theft, and abuse going on there. It's all the things that we talk about in my campaign that we're going to look at when I'm elected governor of Kansas, because of the KDOJ, the Kansas Department of Government Efficiency, that we are using, of course, based on Elon Musk's template. There's no reason to reinvent the wheel here. So for the 27 or 28 departments that report up to the governor in the state of Kansas, at least, every one of those departments will be audited. And we're going to find about at least $1 billion of fraud, waste, abuse, and redundancies. And we're going to turn that back over to the people of Kansas in one form or fashion or another, whether that's relief from income tax, property tax, or an array of other things. But it's so much, that would be so much better for the people of Kansas, because we have on paper a supermajority in the House and the Senate, to have a true Republican conservative in there who is ready to go to work for the people. It'll be an incredible day when that all happens and lines up.
Yeah, and Topeka, is it kind of swampy up there too? I mean, is it
oh
similar
my gosh.
to
Oh God, yeah, we've got swampy, to say the least. We have, in Topeka, and for those of you from Lawrence, Kansas, that's our capital in the state of Kansas. For those of you that go to KU and are products of a liberal education, Topeka's our capital. We have not only a rhino problem, but we have an establishment problem in Kansas. And not a lot of people know this. I know Kimmy's helping us as a co-host. She lives in California. Kimmy would be surprised, perhaps, maybe you all would be, to know that Kansas has a more liberal Supreme Court than California does. So yes, we have a huge swamp issue. In fact, next August, when I'm going to be on the ballot for the primary, and again, that's a year away from now, everybody. The primary is important because that's where we weed out the rhinos and we get the true candidates in. But hopefully I'll win that primary. And along with me on the ballot is an initiative in Kansas whereby it gives the people the right to elect judges to the Supreme Court instead of the current system that has them being appointed by a liberal board of state attorneys. So the election of Supreme Court justices on the ballot being placed back into the hands of the people in Kansas this next August, I should say. And that's part of the reason and way we can reduce the swamp. The other, the rhino issue is one that everybody listening to the show right now, everybody listening knows what a rhino is, a Republican in name only. And it always begs the question, Doug, how do you tell? How do I tell who's a rhino or not? I mean, I've got 6 or 7 people I'm thinking of. How do I tell? Well, there's a few litmus tests. One of my favorites is about election integrity, because I believe we have election integrity issues in this country, okay? Meaning I don't trust our elections necessarily, which is tragic on many levels. So my suggestion is, if you're wondering if a person you're thinking about supporting is a rhino, ask them this question: sir or madam, do you think that there are election integrity issues in this country, in Kansas, in whatever state you live in? If that person says no, or they hem or they haw and they try to think of an excuse why there might not, that's a rhino. Folks, we have definitely got an election integrity issue in this country. Anybody that says no is absolutely a rhino. That's crazy. It's beyond, I mean, I can't wrap my head around it. We want to be sure that we can trust our elections. That should be a bipartisan, widely majority accepted position to have in this country. Couldn't we not please try to get to a place where we can trust our elections? There's other litmus tests. That's my favorite one. And of course, if you're thinking about somebody who's already in office, that you've already got their record to look back on to see how they voted on certain issues, not just election integrity, but any issue that's important to us as conservatives. If you're thinking about people like me who have never been in political office before, I said it, I was in, speaking of Topeka, I was in Topeka the other day at a Q&A session for all of the governor candidates in Kansas. And I proudly said, because the question was, what is your background in politics? What's your qualifications? So I said quite proudly, my qualifications happen to align perfectly with what the founding fathers had as qualifications. I'm not a politician. I've never held political office. I'm a businessman. I've been in corporate America. I'm a master negotiator. I've negotiated multi-billion-dollar deals in Europe and in the United States. Reminds me of somebody else, if you know what I mean. So there's all sorts of ways you can get to vetting a candidate, and you should. I think county, Republican organizations, county commissions, and your local mom and pop county Republican organizations, your state GOPs, for example, should have a agreed upon vetting system whereby you get every candidate on record with regards to, you have to arrive at what issues are important to you in your county and where you live, but have the candidates answer them and get them on record if they've not held office before, because we have a lot of people in Kansas, I'm telling you, and I'm sure this is true where you live, who know that they can't win as a Democrat because it's a crowded field. Now, these are Democrats I'm talking about who put an R after their name, pretending to be a Republican because they know they can't get elected as a Democrat. And then once they're in office, they obviously vote with the left-wing Communist Socialist Party. And that's how we get into these kinds of predicaments, because we haven't vetted. In certain counties, I can say in Kansas and in Missouri, our neighboring state, the county clerks will not let you on the ballot unless you have provided them the vetting information and proven that you will, and taken and sworn an affidavit that you will not do that you are a Republican, that you will vote in with us. So that's just a couple of examples, but yeah, the swamp exists in Topeka for sure, Jay.
Yeah, I mean that's why I think it's so important, to do these things. I'm proud of the candidates that are willing to go out there and get out there early, because we can really see who you are. Kimmy and I and Barbie and Kelly, we all know who you are because we've been, doing spaces with you. We've been on X with you. We know exactly what type of conservative you are. And so for you to come out here and take the time to, to talk to your constituents, to talk to, America, really, because, I'm here in Georgia, but man, I want to see more conservative governors across America because they have a huge impact. And I'll use DeSantis as an example. He's really helped President Trump a lot more than any other governor has. And granted, they were at odds, when they were campaigning against each other in the presidential campaign. But I'm telling you right now that Ron DeSantis has helped him more than any other governor in the USA. And so, we see Sarah Huckabee Sanders. She's a really good conservative governor too, but we see the real impact that it has, and how, some of these rhino governors are really, kind of undermining him. And so that's, this is really a good thing. And I really foresee you winning this. And, hopefully, it's an easy victory for you. I think it will be, getting out there and talking to people and getting your name out there, though. That's really important too.
Thanks, Jay. Yeah, it's going to be a crowded field. There will be 7, 8, 9 people in this primary, which actually works to my advantage. It divvies up the votes. And although I have a podcast, The Right Side with Doug Billings, it's a relatively popular podcast. It's not, I'm not Joe Rogan. And I'm not a household name. I admit it. Not even in Kansas. Doug Billings is not yet a household name, which is sad for those people who have not heard, because such intellectual maturity awaits them when they find out who I am. But yes. So the the way forward for this, and the way that we see this, is if you think Ron DeSantis and Sarah, Huckabee is in Arkansas is a great governor, and they are, or Kristi Noem when she was governor of South Dakota, they were phenomenal governors. And the common thread that they had in common was that they just told the truth. I mean, that's it. They talked common sense, and they weren't politically correct. We have a lot of Republicans, quote unquote, who are politically correct, and they're just not able to, and for whatever reason, and I don't pretend to know all of the reasons, but they're just not 100% truthful, whether they want to walk that line or they're too worried about making a certain segment of their constituency angry. Well, look, our country for the last 4 years, especially under Administrator Biden and Vice Pretender Harris, we were in a nightmare. And there were many people out there, many people I heard when you were hosting your own X Spaces, Jay and Kimmy and Barbie, and they were certain that the republic was on its deathbed and that we were headed to the end. And you know me, and you've heard me, I'm an eternal optimist. America was never on her deathbed. She was most certainly in a nightmare. But the reason we get into the situation, and it's not just Biden, it's because there's not enough strong conservatives to stand up to that nonsense. Look at what we're talking about in this republic, the myth of transgenderism. Okay, so that doesn't exist. There's no such thing as gender misappropriation. No such thing. That is a mental disease. It's a mental illness. And we need to get these people help, most certainly. But we're not going to coddle them to an agenda that would dare to suggest that children can only be happy if they mutilate their genitalia. That's what this radical left segment of this movement wants. Women in men's sports. It's ludicrous. It's ridiculous. It's completely vacant of any shred of common sense. And that's why DeSantis and Huckabee and Noem made so much sense and connected, because they stood up for these truths. And if you think those three were powerful governors, just wait until Governor Billings is unleashed upon the scene. We're going to be that plus more, that on steroids. We're going to be an incredible ally to President Trump, not afraid to stand up to the left. And I'll tell you, and I'll land on this comment, but one of the reasons why I'm in this race, because, many people, why do you want to do this, Doug? There's going to be dirt, mud, and rumors slung. Oh, yes, and there already has. Dirt, mud, rumor, conjecture, defamation. It all comes with the pack. I get it. But I'm doing this because of a certain event that happened early this year. I think it was March, April timeframe. Don't quote me on that. But the issue was the governor, the communist socialist governor, Laura Kelly, formerly known as Democrat, allowed a satanic black mass to be held on the steps of our Capitol. A satanic group welcomed to the capital of Kansas and celebrated what they call a black mass, an affront to all Christians, especially Catholics. That was who they were really after. But it was an affront to everyone who believes in Jesus, anyone who believes in God. And our governor said, well, we might not like what they say or they do, but it's free speech and we've got to allow it. And I have called BS on that since the day I heard it. You see, I happen to believe that the founding fathers had certain intentions for this republic, and wrapping Satanism in the sacred blanket of free speech was not one of their intentions. If people back in their day had tried such a thing, they would have been, at the very least, tarred and feathered. At the most, they would have been burned at the stake. And I'm not advocating that we punish people like that in those ways. I'm just saying that's not the intent of the founders, and it's a complete misinterpretation of their intent to claim that Satanism is supposed to be a religion or wrapped in the blanket of free speech. That would never have computed with our founding fathers. And we have drifted so far away from that. We see it not only in that example, which was one of the straws that broke the proverbial camel's back with my decision to join. I wanted to get into this fight to prevent things like that, but other things as well. I mean, there's much bigger and ultimately, believe it or not, more important issues than just a group of Satanists. I mean, we can deal with them, but there's other issues too that we have to be bold about. We have to be bold leaders and say things in truthful, intellectually mature, and common sense ways. We can't dilly-dally around. We can't walk the fence. Well, Doug, you've got to be governor for all Kansans. Okay, that comment is well met, and I understand it. But I'm not going to let the agenda of transgenderism worked. I'm not going to let it stand. I'm not going to let DEI stand. I'm not going to let the woke agenda in general stand, critical race theory, all of the pornographic books that we have in our school classrooms and libraries, none of that. So if that is what these people mean, boy, you've got to be a governor for all people. If they mean somehow I've got to allow for that nonsense, then I'm not the governor they want, because that stuff is going to be gone the day that I take office through either executive order or work with the legislature to make sure that we have bills drafted that I can sign into law. That's nonsense. And we're going to protect our children. We're going to protect people from the woke agenda. And at the end of the day, really, that kind of nonsense occupies less than 2% of anybody's thought, the majority of 2% of people in Kansas, and less than that if you look at the entire republic.
Sorry. Yeah. So, speaking of schools, do are you supporting like school choice, school voucher programs, those type of things for your state?
I want parents to be able to educate their children any way they see fit. And if that means a voucher to go to a school, or if it means homeschooling, school choice, yes, 1,000% yes. And I happen to have a master's degree in curriculum and instruction. Before I got involved in corporate America as a VP of HR and did all of those contract negotiations, I was a teacher. And prior to that, I was in the seminary for a couple of years studying to be a Catholic priest. I know a thing or two about curriculum, and I know that in Kansas, curriculum decisions are made in Topeka, the state capital, with the Kansas Department of Education, which needs and will be, under my governorship, it will be audited. I mean, that's going to be part of what KDOJ looks at first, is our Department of Education. I need to look at the data, but I have a suspicion that what I'll end up deciding to do is trying, and I'll have to work with the legislature to do this, but trying to remove the decisions about school curriculum from that department and return those decisions to parents and school boards in the counties throughout the state. Now, having said that, we have school boards in Kansas, just like you have them in Georgia, and Kimmy has them in California, that are liberal. So we have a lot of work to do as conservatives. We have to engage in what I call determined patriotism. We've got to get involved in our local levels and turn the ship around. We've got to elect conservative school boards, county commissions, and so forth and so on. And then that's how we begin to change this. And remember, we're operating from a place where prior to the theft of the presidential the election in 2020, most of us were asleep at the wheel. We were not thoroughly engaged in our local levels of government. We just weren't. In fact, for 90 years, we conservatives weren't involved as much as the radical left activists were. And that's not to say that we didn't do good things. We did. We went to 2 great wars and won them. We raised families with traditional American Christian Judeo values, and we did good things, but we did not, if we're honest with ourselves, we didn't get involved on our local level, and so therefore here we are. And so we're the good news is conservatives are much smarter than liberals. I mean, factually, and but they're devious, and they got involved and they stole our education systems, our media, and so forth and so on. And here we are. I mean, all of that's obvious to all of you. But we will recover, but it's going to take determined patriotism. We've got to get involved and get our counties back in shape with conservative leaders at school boards if we want to fix this. But I will advocate that curriculum decisions be returned to parents in counties and school boards. And then, of course, parents who want to homeschool, or if they want vouchers, if there's a family that wants to send their kids to St. James Catholic High School, but they can't afford it, we're going to find out ways with vouchers or other solutions. And again, keep in mind, ladies and gentlemen, KDOJ, the Kansas Department of Government Efficiency, will uncover billions of dollars of fraud, waste, and redundancy. And Kansas already has a huge surplus in tax revenue as it is. Now, we're not swimming in money, but we've had multiple billions of dollars of revenue that have been above expectations in June and July of this year alone. So we're not poor, but we have to be careful. We have to be good stewards of the money. But with DOJ helping and recovering waste, fraud, abuse, and redundancies, there will be money to help give seed money to these kinds of programs for kids and their parents.
Yeah, awesome. And that really, I mean, that really helps kids, and like people think about the vouchers and stuff like that, and who can really take advantage of it. And I saw this when I was teaching in the inner city, is, kids in the poorest areas, actually, if their parents are of the presence of mind and look into it enough, they're the ones that really benefit, because they can go to a better school, with more resources and stuff like that. They're really the ones that could benefit the most from this. And then it spreads out. It actually, helps the schools with the higher populations and stuff like that, because it moves them out of there. Yeah, that means technically less money in there, but it's smaller classroom sizes when they do that. I saw that firsthand. And so, me as a former teacher, I can tell you smaller classroom size is the key to, fixing education in America. But that's a whole other issue. That's not talking about wokeness or anything like that. That's talking about like classroom sizes and how you can make an impact on some of these kids' lives, especially in the inner city where they need the most help because, poverty or whatever, like it really, that's a way you can make a bigger impact, is reducing the classroom sizes. I've talked about that to politicians here in Georgia too, and how to solve things or whatever. And I don't know the solutions to it, honestly, because they would have to completely revamp how they're doing things. But, that's just one of the things that I saw.
So many things to talk about with kids and education, the woke agenda, I talk a lot about the intent of the founding fathers. If we go back and we just do a simple research on curriculum of colonial America schools or pre-colonial America schools, whichever, you'll find a vast difference than what we see today. And what you'll see is the intent of the founding fathers when you look back in time. So for me, when I was in the seminary studying to be a priest, I enjoyed philosophy. And I think that philosophy gets overlooked a lot. And I think that what we have, because of the radical left woke agenda, are kids who can't engage in critical thinking skills. They just can't. And it's not because they can't physically or mentally. It's because they haven't been taught how to engage with critical thinking skills. And so to return that kind of thing into high school, junior high, perhaps curriculum, philosophy, the study of life, of meaning, etc., teaches us how to be critical thinkers. So I will work again with the legislature. I can't just do all this as the governor. I need to partner, and I will, with the Republican supermajority legislature that we have, and begin to make changes. There will be no more rainbow LGBTQ kook flags flown in Kansas schools when I'm governor. There will only be two flags allowed in the classroom: the United States flag and the Kansas flag, just like you see behind me in my studio here. Those are the only flags. The books that are questionable, sometimes borderline, if not overtly pornographic, will be removed, and we're going to stop the globalist agenda. In Kansas, a study came out just last week. There are 150,000 students in Kansas who don't have adequate reading skills. That's completely unacceptable. And we've had a Republican supermajority for decades here. Now, we've not had a Republican governor all of those years, but that's just not acceptable. 150,000 kids who can't read appropriately. Are you kidding me? In this day and age in America, in Kansas, those days are over. And the reason is, and our test scores for kids show that they can't function based on core curriculum because they're taught 80% globalist woke agenda items and 20% the core, which is, reading, writing, arithmetic, history, science, the arts, etc. We're going to change all of that. We're going to flip it. In fact, we're going to make the globalist agenda a goose egg, zero, none of that, and 100% tested on the basics. And we're going to add things like philosophy to the mix. We're going to add civics as opposed to just pure history. The arts, physical fitness, President Trump's Presidential Fitness Award with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. I love it. I remember as a kid participating in that. We had to climb a rope up to the ceiling of the gymnasium, protected only by a 2-inch foam mat on the bottom of the floor. Remember those days? And so we're going to get back to physical fitness and core curriculum in Kansas, and we're going to win. And that's going to change the tide. That will change over time. Remember, we didn't get to where we are now, the theft of the American presidential election, Vice Pretender, Harris, Administrator Biden. We didn't get to that nightmare overnight. It took a long time. So to my point, I'm not saying it's going to take a long time to recover because we're smarter than them. I'm just saying we do have to gift ourselves with a little bit of patience, and make sure that we engage in determined patriotism, take the republic back one county at a time, because that's where the change begins. Forget Washington, D.C. Work in the counties in which you live to get elected real conservative, America First people. And that's how we begin to make really the changes that matter and count. But gosh, Jay, I could go on and on about education. We're going to save the kids. I'm going to make sure that we teach kids how to read and write in cursive again. I mean, really, and I'm not just making a joke. I really am. I mean, I think it's fundamental. I think it's the way that our founding documents are written. And I just am a little bit suspicious of why they don't teach cursive in schools anymore. Could it be perhaps that they don't want these children to read or understand our founding documents? Things that make you go, right?
Right. Yeah. It doesn't seem like it, you can't, like, you don't even know how to sign their name. A lot of these kids, they just, they just print their name or whatever. Like, they don't even know how to, like, I had to teach my sons how to do it. And it was just odd to me because, I think I started learning cursive in like maybe second or third grade. But Kimmy, I saw you on mic there. If you wanted to jump in there, please do.
Oh, sure.
We got just under 1,000 people watching right now. We got 976 watching right now. So thank you for joining us tonight.
Yeah, thank you so much. And if everybody that is listening, if you could please repost the live, we would greatly appreciate it. Thank you so much. And welcome, Doug. So nice to see you tonight.
Hi, Kimmy.
Something you were talking about cursive a few minutes ago, and I homeschooled my youngest son and taught him cursive. And then I sent him, it was even a Christian school that I sent him to. And they said, why is all he know cursive? It's like, well, that's what he's been taught. I taught him cursive. And you're right, Doug. They don't want these kids to be able to read the Constitution. It's written in cursive.
Yep.
I mean, it's crazy. So, but you're right. We need to get back to just like the core teaching in schools, like you've talked about many times, like offer some trade classes, things like that.
Yes.
That's very important. Teaching kids how to work on their cars, change their oil, things like that. There's just so many things that we need to focus on. And you were talking about KDOJ. If you could please explain, we are all familiar with it here in the live, but if you could please let our listeners know exactly what you're going to be doing with Kansas and your idea for KDOJ.
Absolutely, Kimmy. So we actually have already got 7 or 8 people in a mix of people that are just volunteering their time to look at the public records of our budget in Kansas. People who are bankers, accountants, a couple of high tech, geeks, the tech industry and so forth. And they're doing, and I modeled that right after what Elon was doing. And so they're looking at what is available to us as in public form, the budgets and so forth of the departments that report up to the governor's office in Kansas. And they're telling me that, and they've been doing this since about since May, and they're telling me there's over $1 billion that we can see potential recovery of waste, fraud, and abuse. So, in context, if we had $1 billion of just extra money, I'm not talking about money that's already coming in through taxable streams right now, but just poof, an extra $1 billion because we've recovered it from waste, fraud, and abuse and redundancies, that could eliminate property tax in Kansas for every adult. I'm not talking just seniors, not veterans, everybody. Property tax gone. Now, of course, the thing is the governor and the legislature can eliminate, and they've done to a degree, lowered and eliminated the state portion of property tax. Now we've got to turn our attention to the counties, where the governor is really powerless, other than the ability to use, the bully pulpit to do things like this, to get in front of a camera and an audience and say, hey, look, you people that live in Johnson County, Kansas, or Sedgwick County, Kansas, or Wyandotte County, Kansas, you guys need to get on board and begin to fire your legislators and your county commissioners who are assessing your property taxes, because at the state level, we've already done it. Now it's your turn. And that's the work of it all. You've got to be able to muster up enough support at the local level so that they fire the people who are doing this. But, another way that we can look at that money and spend it is to reduce or eliminate income tax, which would be a win as well. Property tax comes up no matter where I go in the state of Kansas. And it makes sense. It's obvious why, because, we left England. Our forefathers left England and came to this country precisely because of the duties and the taxes that the king was placing on them. And they came here to start a new life and so forth. Property tax is the modern day example of that. And we've had enough. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Once you buy your home, your farm, your ranch, and for those of us that live in Western Kansas, where it's a huge farming and ranching community, for those of you that buy your car and you've paid cash for it, or you finally paid it off after a series of months, well, you shouldn't have to continue to rent it from the government, which is exactly what property tax is. The American dream is not for rent, ladies and gentlemen. It's not the intent, going back to the intent of the founding fathers. That is not what they intended. And although this will be, what I'm about to say, will be an uphill battle for me as governor when I win, but I'm going to engage in it, and I will do everything I can to prove that ultimately, and I'll take it to the highest court in the land if I have to, and I'm going to work with Chris Kobach, who is an excellent attorney general in the state of Kansas. He is one of us. He's excellent. And I'll partner with him to prove that property tax is unconstitutional. It's unconstitutional. It impedes our ability to pursue life, liberty, and happiness, which is the ownership of property. That's the very definition of the American dream. Owning your own stuff. And property tax prevents us from doing that. Now, it's going to be an uphill battle. And I'm not making any predictions about winning it, but I'm going to wage that battle. And I'm at least going to be heard across the country speaking about that issue. And that's how these things eventually get legs and they start to run. You start talking about it in public long enough and often enough, more people hear you and they go, hey, listen to that guy over there in Kansas. This Billings guy, he's onto something. Property tax, unconstitutional, pursuit of life, liberty, and happiness. It prevents, hey, he may be right. And so then you begin to get, judges and the courts behind you. Now there's precedent. People have tried to do this in the past and courts have said, well, yeah, you can tax people on your property. Well, okay, that's in the past. Let's go forward and see if we can change minds. Because who says that's not possible? Why? Why isn't it possible? It's like the old movie, Braveheart with Mel Gibson. Why is it impossible? Why can't you think that we can have independence? Why can't we have independence from property tax? We can, but we will never have it if we begin with the fact that, well, that's not possible. So there's a lot of things to do and a lot of battles to wage, but I'm clearly engaged in that one. So KDOJ will look at every government office in Kansas that reports up to the governor, and I will audit them. We will see where's the waste, fraud, and abuse. We have, the Department of Administration, which is basically the Human Resources Wing, Department of Education, the Board of Nursing, the Kansas State Highway Patrol, the National Guard, on and on and on. Parks and Recreation, land, all of it. And we will find waste, fraud, and abuse amounting in what I'm told will be billions of dollars. And I will ask the legislature to make KDOJ a permanent cabinet level position to the governor in Kansas. So after 8 years of Governor Billings, the KDOJ benefits will remain. And that will be my legacy, I hope, to the state, so that we have this locked in as a permanent cabinet level position. I will need the legislators' help to draft a bill to sign into law. But gosh, if we have a Republican supermajority in Kansas, it can be glorious when you think about it, the things that we could accomplish if I'm governor.
Yeah, and there's no efforts like that right now currently, is there?
No, not in. No, they in Kansas they made some little thing called it COGE, and I'm not going to remember COGE because I can't remember. But that's my point. Nobody knows about it in Kansas. It's an online suggestion portal for where you think waste, fraud, and abuse might exist. It's not a proactive department that takes a scalpel out and slices away waste, fraud, and abuse from these departments that report into the governor. So the short answer to your question is no, nothing like that exists in Kansas.
Yeah, I mean that's a major frustration for conservatives nationwide. Is it's seeing actually implementing, like they're pointing out where the fraud, waste, and abuse has happened, and they're pointing out where where the cuts can be made, and we're just not seeing it yet. And granted, it's a lot tougher than people think, but the thing is like, people want to see a result, because we know this is happening. We're sending billions overseas, and then we're talking about, we can't even get a kid a school voucher or something like that. It's really frustrating for a lot of conservatives. And so I know that's one of the main complaints I hear from people a lot, and President Trump is doing the best he can, but he also has a very weak Congress and Senate that aren't really helping him with a lot of these things. And so, Elon, you saw his frustration with it, and I get it, honestly. Like you point all these things out. We know where we're burning the money for no reason, and why aren't we stopping it? So it's huge frustration. And so if you can get that done for Kansas, that would be amazing.
Yeah, we're going to get it done, and we will be transparent. There will be, this is for me a day one executive order. KDOJ will be formed on day one through an executive order. We'll get the work done. I can do that as governor. Now I can't be like President Trump. I can't write executive orders for everything. Like sometimes it appears like Trump can write an executive order for anything that he wants, and in many cases he can from the federal level. But as a governor of Kansas, I can only control those departments that report up to me directly. So everyone, KDOJ will be a formed entity on day one through an executive order. It will begin the audit process, and they'll have quarterly reports every 3 months, a report out, and it will be published. There's nothing to hide. What are we finding? And then we have to what we find goes into a pool, an account, and we have to then tell the legislature, okay, here's the money. The governor can't just wave a magic wand and dispense it throughout the state. You need to draft a bill that tells us what we're going to do with this money and what will be the ongoing process. And that's your job. You do your legislation, and I'll sign it if we come to terms on the bill. But total transparency, and people will see where money is saved. No more woke DEI agenda nonsense is just one example. But yes, your point is well met. The federal government that Trump has to deal with is such a monstrosity. He's done a lot of good. I love the guy. I love President Trump, but he's up against a behemoth of an organization in the federal government for sure.
Right. Yeah. And then, in terms of I'm not sure what the percentage of Kansas economics, like it has to do with agriculture and stuff like that. But has there been any impact? Like they were, really concerned about the tariffs and stuff like that. I don't know what percentage, soy you guys grow up there, for instance, because China buys a lot of soy and stuff like that. Have they seen any impact on that, or has it been not really
not much? A detrimental effect? No. And so Kansas primarily, so when you look at, if you can envision, for those of you who look at the center of the country and you see Kansas on a map, from Topeka, which in Wichita, I'm not saying those are dead center in the state, but in general, everything west of Topeka and Wichita is rural, farmland, ranch land, etc. Dodge City, Kansas, with where Wyatt Earp got his start and all of that. So you've got all of those, the western half of the state, farming, ranching, and I don't know. I haven't heard any stories from any state who have been crushed, by the Trump tariffs or this and that. In fact, the markets are now opened to Kansas beef. We now are open more than we have been to Europe to sell beef. We've always been able to, but we're even more so able to do it now, and wheat and crops, soybeans and so forth. So the answer to your question, we haven't been negatively impacted. In some ways, it might be a little bit too early to tell the direct benefit, but no one here is raising alarms about Trump and his tariffs with regards to agriculture. What we do find, what I see, at least what I hear when I talk to people, is the land. We have to be careful. In Kansas, they passed a law, and it's a good law, that says no foreign company or country can buy land within 100 miles of a military base. And I think that's a good first step. However, in my view, no foreign country or company should be able to buy Kansas land anywhere, no matter where it is. None. And we got to be careful of people like Bill Gates and George Soros when they want to buy land. I tend to get nervous when I see Bill Gates buying a lot of farmland, because I know for a fact he's not a friend of real beef. And so we have to be careful who we're selling and allowing to buy our land, no matter where that land is, next to a military base or not. So a lot of things to look into there as well, Jay.
Yeah, that was one of the things. Go ahead, Kimmy.
And you're right, we cannot allow that anywhere. We should have no foreign country. They should not be allowed to purchase
Exactly.
land in your state. Like it's all over California. There's some going on right down in wine country, which is about 20 minutes from me down the hill. They purchased a bunch of, I'm assuming vineyards, most likely Bill Gates. Not sure, but yeah, it's happening everywhere, and this should not be tolerated.
When you drive, I was in Western Kansas a couple of, going on about, well, for the Independence Day holiday. I went out to Western Kansas, Colby, Kansas, Hoxie, Selden, met with a great farmer out there and toured his land with him. We also have to look at these damn windmills. You know, driving through the beautiful Flint Hills of Kansas, you know, you're driving through there, and you might as well be on the set of Dances with Wolves, right? I mean, it's just gorgeous, and it looks like you've stepped back in time, and it's beautiful in its own way. And then you get to a point in the beautiful Flint Hills of Kansas where you see just thousands, and I'm sure there's thousands of them, windmills, these giant wind turbines and so forth. Just makes my stomach turn. And then when you begin to look into it, those wind turbines aren't even owned by American companies. They're Canadian or French companies that are paying farmers sometimes as much as $80,000 a year if they allow them to put up a windmill on their property. So $80,000 a year is a hard nut to crack when you're trying to convince people not to do that. We need to find a way. And this farmer, Gary is his name, that I was touring his property with, he said that, you know, because I'm against the wind turbines. And I said, well, I don't want to piss these farmers off. I mean, they're making 80 grand a year, and some of them have multiple wind turbines and on their property. So they're making a lot of money. He says, you might piss off about 10 farmers who are really in the whole state, in this whole section but you're going to have 10,000 on your side if you condemn this and you try to figure a way out of it. So that's the local perspective that I need to learn and know. And I appreciated what Gary said. And so we're going to find out a way. Maybe we grandfather them out so that if you've got these things on your property now, once they break down or once they become outdated, you're not going to be allowed to rebuild them back up. I don't know yet. That's one we've got to get. Again, I've got to partner with the legislature and figure a way out of this. Gary, this farmer, is convinced that these thousands of wind turbines have affected the weather. He says, we don't get any rain out here anymore. Unless it's a massively big storm, we don't get your gentle rain showers out here anymore. It's dry. We have to depend on irrigation. And he says, this has never been the case. And he said, it only happened after these things started going up. I don't have science and data behind. That's just what he's told me. So I can't sit here and prove with statistical data that that's the case, but it's an interesting story. And I think it's worth looking into at the very least. And then of course the solar farms and all this, buying up multiple millions of dollars of acres that could be plowed or returned to natural Kansas prairie grass, which helps reserve and preserve underground water reserves. We have a huge, vast underwater network system of water that no one really thinks about, but it's vast and it needs to be conserved. All right, it replenishes from other parts when it rains and so forth. These underground caverns that are billions and billions of square acres wide and have multiple trillions of gallons of water in them, all underground. Well, prairie grass and all that helps conserve all of that. And if we cover up the ground with solar panels, it ruins that conservancy. So you see, conservatives do conserve. We're not anti-environment. We want to conserve the resources that are there. It's the wind towers and the solar panels that are destroying the environment. So it's absolutely infuriating that we get the bad rap from all of that. And then we need to finally, and I'll land here, we need to look at nuclear. You know, Kansas has, again, vast natural gas resources. Vast. None of us and our grandchildren will outlive the supply of natural gas that we have in Kansas. But that day could potentially come, and why not then bolster up? We have a Wolf Creek power plant that's a nuclear plant. It's safe, it's clean, and it's effective, and we can use that as a power source. We in America have the safest, most reliable sources of nuclear energy anywhere, and we shouldn't be afraid to talk about using it. I'll land there.
Yeah, I don't know how an environmentalist or like a left-leaning person can and drive by one of these wind farms and think that that's great for the environment. It looks horrendous. It tears up the land. It's just crazy that they would think that this is environmentally friendly. It's obviously not environmentally friendly. Like you cannot just have these big metal things out. And Illinois is a good example. When you drive through Illinois, and you'll just see them all over the place. They just fill everywhere. That's all you can see is these damn windmills, and I just don't understand, how that's great for the environment, because obviously it is, and it's terrible for it. And so
absolutely, it's maddening.
Especially for the birds, right? The birds, the poor birds, like Donald Trump always talks about. The birds. And I've heard it like, animal. I'm sorry? I mean, all kinds of animals are being affected by these things. So,
In Kansas, the pheasant hunting industry is ruined and decimated. Yeah, I can go on, but you're right. The poor birds, as Trump would say.
The birds.
Yeah, and then the base of it, it's not like these things are light. The base of it has, this huge, thing to support it or whatever, and it you basically destroy the land forever right there, unless you can dig all that up or whatever. But if you're a farmer, whatever, getting the 80 grand a year or whatever to stay afloat or whatever, you're not going to be able to do that. You're ruining your land forever. It's just terrible what they're doing.
Okay, and we were talking about the farmers a few minutes ago. I just have a quick question for you, Doug. How do you plan to reduce taxes and regulations on Kansas farmers and small businesses to promote economic growth and align with MEGA's America First agenda?
Yep, great question. And so that's one of the key reasons I want to partner so much with our legislature to get bills in place. We've got to take our boot off of the throat of small businesses, whether they're ranchers, farmers, or just entrepreneurs who are in the suburbs who want to start a business, and get the regulations off their backs to streamline that. And that's where I'll work with the Secretary of State in Kansas as well. And that's a seat that's open as well. There are people running for that position, and it reports up in through the governor's office to a degree. And so I'll work with that person and really, as much as I can, demand that person reduces the regulations and the burdensome, the absolute burden of the unneeded regulations and bureaucracy surrounding business ownership. You should be able to go to the website, the Kansas Secretary of State's website, if you're a business owner, and you should be able to file for an EIN number and get your articles of incorporation and do all of that stuff in a matter of at most an hour, at best 15 minutes. You should be able to have all of that done by a few clicks on your computer on the Secretary of State's website and be registered and ready to open your doors for business. And we're going to make that happen in Kansas when I'm elected governor. That's just one example. You look at the ability that farmers have with land. Again, I can't get away from property tax. We are losing so many farmers because of property tax. People's farms have been in their families for generations, and they've been long paid for. They don't owe another dime to anybody on their land, on their home, their farming equipment, whatever. But because of property taxes being so outrageous, they have to sell and they move. So that's, again, working with the legislature from day one. Executive orders, to form task forces that look into this. But look, we're not going to live on committee. We're not going to live on just a committee looking into things. We're going to live on action. So I need the legislature to draft bills that will reduce and eliminate bureaucracy. KDOJ is a huge part of that, to find it. Okay, now we've identified it here. We hand it over to the legislature, who's a supermajority Republican body, and we say, go to work. Let's start drafting some bills that I can sign into law that will free these people up to do business, to get organized, to make sure that their doors can open without the big government saying, oh, wait a minute, you didn't fill out this form, you didn't do that. It's not, look, I've been a business owner. I have a podcast that's a business. When I was a teacher in the summertime, I had a business, a lawn company, in fact. And it shouldn't take weeks or days even, to get registered, to have a business and start to work and collect money from your customers. You should be able to do that in a matter of an hour, like I said. And I don't care how complex your business is, to get the paperwork done that you need to conduct business should take no more than an hour. And let's get to work.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just had a question too about Second Amendment rights. I just wanted to get your stance on protecting Second Amendment rights. Kansas, I know, is a big hunting state, right? You talked about pheasants and stuff like that. Just what are your stance on those? And because people are asking in the comments here, and we got 1,350 people watching currently.
Oh, fantastic. And I see Patriot Nola. I'm just looking at some of these comments. Hi, Stacy Ann. I see you. Thank you for being here and helping. Yama, I see you. Thank you, friend. And Mark Turiner. All right. Second Amendment. Kansas is fortunate because we're a constitutional carry state. You can have and own a gun. Folks, I'm telling you, the only document we need to secure our Second Amendment rights is our Constitution. That is it. You don't need to have a class. You don't need to, it's wise to go to a class. It's wise to have somebody show you how to operate a firearm. Don't get me wrong, liberals, don't get me wrong. But to demand that you have those kinds of things in order to have a gun is nonsense. The only document we need in order to carry a firearm is the Constitution of the United States. And then protecting it becomes a matter of due diligence. We don't let them start to chip away at the God-given right of the Second Amendment. So, for example, there are liberals out there that will tell me in this debate when it comes up that, oh, Doug, yeah, but look, you're talking about AR-15s and 14s and all of these automatic rifle versions that we see out there. The founding fathers never envisioned that. You're the guy who says the intent of the founding fathers. Well, they never intended these kinds of rifles. And I say, hang on just a second, because the founding fathers made it clear. Because, the liberals will say, all they had were muskets, Doug. All they had were muskets. They didn't have these ARs and da-da-da-da-da. And then the real whack jobs will say, well, does that mean that you're going to give them permission to have like cannons and tanks? And so that's nonsense. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about firearms, which are guns, okay? Guns that you can hold and carry. We're not talking about tanks. We're not talking about missile launchers and nuclear buttons, folks, to the radical liberal mob. I would kindly remind them of that. But yeah, they had muskets. All right. Well, the founding fathers, as it turns out, were pretty smart. Muskets were the most advanced firearm of the day back then. And the founding fathers wanted people to have them. So we're going to be people who follow the intent of the founding fathers. The founding fathers wanted the people to have advanced firearms in their possession because, they just experienced a revolution where people had advanced firepower also and tried to take their rights and their lives away from them. Oh, but Doug, we're not going to run into that in this day and age. Oh, really? J6 sound familiar? George Floyd riots sound familiar? All of these fake events that are fostered and created on purpose by the radical liberal mob. Oh, Doug, you're a conspiracy theorist. No, I'm not. They will create chaos on purpose because they think that it drives us to believe that we need the big government to save us. Your Second Amendment will never be diminished, shall not be infringed when I'm governor. That's an easy one for me. The documents of our founding are the only documents we need to prove that, and it's never gonna fail. We will never back down from that in Kansas, and we just won't. That's the way it is. I love the question, and I love what it represents, and I love getting into that debate about the founders' intent, because they did intend us quite literally to be well armed and to be able to defend ourselves and to hunt and all of that. So that's where I land on that question.
Here in Georgia, one of the, and I'm sure this is the same in Kansas. Here in Georgia, one of the major concerns for conservatives is election integrity, and how do we get election integrity, and what does that look like on what we're suggesting. And so a lot of people, really want, in-person voting, paper ballots, voter ID. These are the types of things that most conservatives want to see, because why wouldn't you? Because, that's just common sense to we owe, the state owes that to the people, to feel secure in their vote, and to make sure that their vote is being counted. And other things that I've heard is, to get a receipt or something like that, or to be able to check on these types of things. So talk about your ideas on voter integrity, and how we restore the trust that has been lost.
Yeah, it's an important issue, and it's probably, no, let me check that. It's not probably, it is definitely the most important issue that we face, because whatever issue, for the thousands of people that are listening to this interview tonight, no matter what issue is your favorite, whether it's the right to life, whether it's the Second Amendment, whether it's property taxes, whatever it is, none of that matters unless we trust our elections, unless we know that our elections are truthful, transparent, and accurate, reliable. So for me, day one, executive order, the Election Integrity Task Force, another task force that will go after and look at waste, fraud, and abuse in our voting system. We have it. This is one of my key litmus tests for determining who the rhinos really are in our party. We already know the radical left liberal agenda. They want the machines, although when it was Clinton, you've all seen the news clips. So there was times where they didn't, but now they do, and this and that. So we've got to make sure that we trust our elections. I am on record as saying I would rather not have the machines. I would rather, again, go back to what the founders intended: paper ballots, watermarked, made by the same company. There's a guy out of Arizona, Mark Fincham. If you haven't heard of him, look him up. He's a friend of mine. He's been on my show a few times, met him in person several times. He's got a great take on all of this. And paper watermarked ballots, and we get back to that, get rid of the machines. Now there's a couple of people, a couple of groups that will then sprout up, and they will say, well, hang on, because look, if you're talking about paper ballots on election day, and if we've got, 10 or 12 or more items, things that people have to vote on, you're having everybody check a box and this and that, and it's going to take time. And I don't think time. Well, look, there are certain states, there are countries that do this. Okay. Canada does this. They vote on paper. There are other countries that do it. So don't give me the nonsense about, well, it's going to take, because Doug, you're going to make people wait in line for hours and hours and hours, this and that and that. And you're also in favor of election day, Doug. How are we going to get all this done election day? We're going to need a week or 2 or 3. Okay. So they go off on this panic. When I begin to talk about this, it's been done not only in the United States, but it's been done in other countries. We can do it. And on top of all of that, in Kansas, I'm going to work with the legislature to, every election day, we make it a paid statewide holiday. So in the state of Kansas, on election day, you get the day off. Okay, paid. And you can go vote. Now, this gives people the opportunity to do what the founders intended, to vote on election day. We don't need to have election month, ladies and gentlemen. That's where fraud comes into play. You got boxes of ballots sitting around for a month. Are you kidding me? Now, we will always, so, it's a convenience. I get it. It's a convenience. And we become lazy. Oh, Doug, I don't want to wait in line for 3 hours on election day. And I always say, I wonder if the soldier who went to battle and died to protect your right to vote and stand in that line thought that his participation in that battle and the loss of his life might have been an inconvenience. Do you think? So let's put things in context. Are you really going to complain that you have to wait in line for 2 or 3 hours on election day, given the fact what God has given us and what the veterans have done to protect what God has given us? Really? Is that what you're going to complain about? Because if so, it's weak. I'm sorry. We will do and engage in determined patriotism. Now you've got the day off. Now that gives us many more people to draw upon to become voter registration officials, and voter registration officials to oversee the process. Many more volunteers available because they don't have to go to work that day. They've got the day off. And we can get more people involved to help expedite the situation. And no, you're not going to have to wait. I mean, I think in rare circumstances, maybe you'll find a story that, well, this guy had to wait in line for 5 hours. Maybe there was some, situation that was beyond our control. But in general, no. On election day, everybody's got the day off. That means you can go during any time during the day. You can get up really early and go. You can go at lunch. You can go during off hours, during the day. So it's for me, it's the intent of the founding fathers, and it's a simple thing, and it should be something that we engage upon. But we've got to get the trust in these elections back. And I don't believe in machines that can be hacked through a remote system are trustworthy. I just don't. We need to work through that and find a resolution. So I'm on record as saying, let's get rid of the machines. Let's go back to paper ballots, hand counting. Let's work with the legislature to give us the day off and train more people to be there at the election and voting polling stations, to be the officials that we need to monitor and take care of the situation. And there'd be more stations with paper ballots. We can open up more stations than we had machines. Machines, you're pretty limited. You only get certain amount of machines. Well, paper is a pretty readily available resource. So we can have as much paper and watermark ballots as we need to get the lines moving. So don't let that excuse, cause you concern that, we shouldn't pursue this. I think we need to. I think it's the founders' intent. In Kansas, they passed a law this year whereby the ballots have got to be received by 8 o'clock the evening of election day. No more of this 24 hours, 48 hours later, we're still taking in votes. So that's that's an excellent step in the right direction. 8 o'clock p.m. cutoff. If you don't have your vote in, no more, they don't count after that. Now, a lot of politicians say, well, that's finally made election day election day. With all due respect, it hasn't. They can still vote for 20 days prior to that, right? So it's really not election day. We have election 20 days in Kansas. I'd like to get it to election day where we get all this done. Now, for the military and for people who are legitimately impaired, who have either intellectual or physical disabilities, certainly we can always accommodate. Voting in person would be required for everyone. We do have good voter ID laws in Kansas. I know that not every state does. And we also now have a law on the books, and it might be shocking to some, but the Kansas Constitution until this year never said that you had to be a citizen in order to vote. So the liberals, of course, opened that up. Anybody can vote. Well, we've now got it locked down with language. And I know it sounds ridiculous that we even have to have this conversation, but now we've got legislation and a law that says you must be an American Kansas resident to vote in Kansas. And so we're lucky in that regard. We've got some good laws on the books. Still much more to do. The number one issue, if we care about any issue at all, if we can't trust the vote, nothing else matters.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's just something that people are owed to, and we were talking about this with Candace Taylor the other night too. And, one of the things that she said is, if you say we can't get rid of the machines, right? It's too much, whatever. They won't allow it or whatever. Like, why wouldn't you validate the count? Why wouldn't you have a system where, you're hand validating the count to make sure that it's correct? Why wouldn't we want to ensure that there's, integrity in the system? And why wouldn't you automatically do that? I just don't understand that there is no justification for not doing that in my mind. And so that's, we were talking about this with her the other night too. And then I have a good friend, the Texas one, when we were up in Idaho, and they actually drafted a bill for this. But, we talked about a tax credit for you go out and vote or whatever, you get a $50 tax credit, right? For a maximum of, 2 elections per year. You've got a primary and a general or whatever, up to a maximum of $100 a year. It's not a big deal, but it'll help get people out there and do their civic duty and get out and vote. It's a small token, to get people out to vote, to incentivize, people to show up and vote. And that should be bipartisan, right? Because it'll impact everybody. It's not a ton for a lot of us, but the thing is like for some people that is a big deal, and so good for them, and go out and vote and you'll get your $50 tax credit. I don't see why something like that couldn't be done. It seems common sense to me.
Yeah. Yeah, I popped in and was listening and watching to a little bit of your Candace Taylor show the other night. I love her. I've met Candace long 4 years ago or so down there in Georgia, and love it. Could listen to her voice, her sweet little Georgian accent. I could listen to it all day. But she's one of the good people. She's one of the good guys, and I wish her well. She's right. It should be no one's problem, and we should all agree that elections need to be certified and verifiable. every time. And it shouldn't be a battle that we have to wage. That should be one of the easiest things to come agree to an agreement upon.
Yeah, absolutely. Kimmy, did you have anything? Go ahead.
I did. I just kind of want to switch topics, Doug, real quick to immigration. Something that we haven't really touched on yet today. Um, my question to you is, what specific steps would you take to secure Kansas and prevent illegal immigration from straining straight resources in line with President Trump's security
Yeah,
policy?
excellent. Happy to talk about it. One of my favorite topics, actually. So, day one, executive order: the Kansas State Highway Patrol and the Kansas National Guard both report to the governor. I'm going to order them both to lock down and seal up our borders and to work with and comply with 100% of the time. Tom Homan, as the director of ICE, and Kristi Noem, director of Homeland Security, we're going to cooperate with both of those individuals to in 100% manner. So lockdown, shut down, and I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, but everybody's got to go who's here illegally. Oh, but Doug, what about Mrs. Ahmed, who works at the 7-Eleven? She's got a great family. They're law-abiding citizens. She's 80 years old, and she's just a clerk at the local 7-Eleven or the convenience store, right? Mrs. Ahmed's got to go home. I'm sorry. There is no favors, no, President Trump has a great program that's in place that gets very little mention, and this is the self-deportation program. People can self-deport. People who are here illegally. Not everyone who is here illegally have necessarily nefarious intents. Now, everybody who's here illegally is a criminal. There's no getting around that. I'm sorry. So Mrs. Ahmed's a criminal. I don't care how innocent she may appear and how great her family has been. She's a criminal. She's here illegally. We've got to say that out loud. Now, we can give Ms. Ahmed a chance, self-deport. And Trump's program actually pays these people their airfare to go back to their country of origin and to get back in line. And you know what? Most of the time, that process is expedited so they can get back here more quickly, legally. So that's, that doesn't get a lot of airtime, but it's out there and it exists. Now, beyond that, I can't talk about illegal immigration without also talking about child and human trafficking. In my mind, they're linked. And ladies and gentlemen, no matter where you are listening to or watching this show right now, child sex trafficking happens in your zip code. It happens in every zip code in this republic, everywhere. I don't care how rural that zip code is or how secluded it is, child and human trafficking happens. And so it is a national tragedy, and it's a monstrous evil. And I will order the Kansas Highway Patrol and the Kansas National Guard to hunt down these monsters. And I'm going to ask Chris Koba, our incredible conservative attorney general, to get the KBI involved. Again, if you're from Lawrence, Kansas, that's the Kansas Bureau of Investigation. I know you don't always learn these things in public school, but that's what that is. And I'm going to ask Chris Kobach to get them involved, to prosecute to the fullest extent of the law, to prosecute these criminals with extreme prejudice, because that's the difference between us and the liberals, who do not prosecute with extreme prejudice dangerous and violent criminals. In fact, we all know the stories. If they're even sentenced at all, which in many cases they're not, they're given incredibly light sentences and let out early, which again, it begs the question, why in the world do liberal attorneys generals and states district attorneys and judges, why do they let these monsters out early if they're even put in prison at all? Folks, evidence of the obvious is sufficient. They want them back on the streets. Why, Doug? That's crazy. You're a nut job. No, they do. They want them back on the streets. Otherwise, they would keep them in jail. It doesn't get any simpler than that. They want them back out on the streets. And they want them back on the streets because they think that when they are out there, they rain down and create more chaos, which they do. And again, chaos is the patron demon of the radical left movement in America. They believe that if they inflict enough chaos, that we'll be inclined to think that we need the big government to save us. Well, that's not the truth, and we're not going to let it happen. And so the good news is that the tide on all of these topics, immigration, child trafficking, etc., all of that is changing into our favor. People are waking up to this, and they're not having it anymore. And ironically, the radical liberal left is doubling down on all of that nonsense. I don't see them doing well in the midterm. I know that some people think that we might be in trouble in the midterm elections. I just don't see the radical left really doing well in any other election until they stop doubling down on this nonsense that is driven by a vast minority of members within their party. I just don't see it happening. I think that we're going to have, more and more people wake up and do what they did during this last presidential election in record numbers. Come to our side, because the Democrat Party doesn't exist anymore. It's left them. And so they're coming over to our side because they're not stupid. John and Jane Doe on the streets of America, who may have voted for Administrator Biden and Vice President Harris, look around and they say to themselves, this is not what I signed up for. I don't know what they're doing, but this isn't what I wanted. And so they come over to our side and they voted for Trump. And I think that trend is continuing every time the radical liberal left doubles down on their nonsense. So, Kimmy, illegal immigrants have got to go. I will cooperate fully with Tom Homan, Kristi Noem, etc., President Trump, on his immigration policies. I identify with him completely. Kansas will be locked up, shut down. Kansas will no longer be a border state. Tom Homan is the one that said it first. Every state in the union is a border state because of our immigration problem. Well, Kansas will not be once Governor Billings is in office. And then the other side of that coin is child and human trafficking also will be decimated and done away with in this state.
Yeah, you've in the past, when you've talked about aircraft manufacturing and a few other things in Kansas. Talk about how you're going to attract manufacturing back to Kansas, how you're going to help bolster the different industries and get growth happening better for Kansas.
Yep. Excellent point. Yeah. Wichita, Kansas, for those of you that don't know, is the aerospace capital of the world. Really, every major airline company is there. Boeing is there. All of the small engine aircrafts, Boeing, the large engine aircraft, it's all right there. Wichita's infrastructure is already designed and capable of sustaining that reputation of the aerospace capital of the world. So with that in mind, we will talk with Elon Musk about bringing SpaceX to Kansas, a manufacturing plant. I would love to have a launch facility in Kansas. I don't know if that's possible, but certainly a manufacturing facility. And we won't do it by issuing these things called star bonds, which our current governor just got in a little town called DeSoto, Kansas. They issued billions of dollars of star bonds to Panasonic to manufacture electronic vehicle batteries. So it can't even open. They can't even get it right. It was supposed to open a few months ago. It has not opened. They've had one problem after another. But beyond all of that, which could be that could happen to anybody. I mean, anybody can have troubles opening up. But the star bonds, the billions of dollars that we've given to billionaires, throttle the state, the people of the state of Kansas. So they're footing the bill for this. Okay, the people of Kansas. All right. So star bonds are a non-starter for me. We can get businesses to Kansas without issuing star bonds, folks. So how do you do that? My example with SpaceX, we already have the infrastructure in place. Kansas is the center, literally the geographical center of this nation. There's actually a town, Jay, and I had it. It just left my mind. I didn't write it down. There's a town in Kansas that is the geographical center of the continental United States. I'll look it up and I'll give it to you some other time, but trust me on that. So it makes sense for Elon to come here. We have the infrastructure in place. We have land that Kansas owns that we can work out a deal with him to build his without burdening the taxpayers. I don't want to give a billionaire billions when the people of Kansas can't even own their home or their car or their ranch or their farm. So we're not going to, but we have the infrastructure and we're right in the middle of everywhere you want to go, Elon, right in the middle. So why not try it here? Why not do it here? Why not manufacture that? Now, when he says yes to that, and he will, we'll have other businesses automatically gravitate toward high-tech businesses that want to get involved and be wherever SpaceX is. And that will help us get to the next one that I want to get. And that's when I talk with President Trump about having a United States Space Force, a base right here in Kansas for the same reasons. And it doesn't necessarily, SpaceX makes sense for Wichita. The United States Space Force could be almost anywhere within Kansas because, and I'd use the same pitch, if you will, We're the center of the country, Mr. President. It makes sense to have your Space Force in the center of all of us to protect us, the center of the dome, if you will. So we'll engage. It's what I did for a living for 23 years on negotiated contracts. We'll bring them to the table with incentives that don't involve star bonds, with land that we already own, that we can not give, but discount or use the land as the incentive to come that we already have anyway, without burdening the taxpayers. The infrastructure is already there as well. And what if we are lacking a road or a rail that we need to get in or out? That's nothing. That's peanuts in the grand scheme of things. But we'll have the company here, and that tax revenue will be, I hope, the legislature will agree, I hope, that we can begin to use those multiple billions of dollars in revenue from taxes and business to help ease the tax burden for John and Jane Doe in Kansas. The farmers, the ranchers, the seniors, the young who want to buy a home, who have the same, the young people in this country, they're not stupid. They look down the road and they go, I'm not going to be able to buy my home. Jay, when I was a kid, my mom didn't have to work. She stayed home and raised us kids. My dad went to work. We were a middle-class family. We were by no means rich, but we weren't poor. We could go on summer vacations every year, and we did. And we need to get back to that. And I think this is a way that we do it. We don't need to convince ourselves that the days of a single income family are history. We can get back to that. We can get back to that tradition. And it's an honorable tradition. It's my mom raising us, staying home, making the decision not to go into corporate America and work is an honorable decision. And a father who does that and takes care of his family is an honorable. And that's American traditional values in practice and in play. It's not an insult to anyone to suggest that somebody should stay home and raise the kids. That's honor at the highest level of honor. That is it. And we can get back to that if we do all of these things, if we make sure that we're not squandering money, that we can save redundancy, waste, and abuse and give it back to the people. The possibilities are limitless, and there's every reason to be optimistic about all of that.
All righty, I do have another question. Thank you so much, Doug. We just have so many questions for you this evening. You just let us know when you're ready to go. I know you have a prior commitment this evening.
Thanks, Kimmy. I'll let you know. Yep.
Okay, thank you, Doug. How would you address the opioid crisis and promote health freedom in Kansas?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a big one, and it ties into what we talked about before, Kimmy, to a degree. I mean, you've got illegal immigration, the border issues, trafficking, all of this. So it is a problem. I like what Trump has done. Quietly over the weekend, Trump gave permission to the military to engage the cartels. And I think that's a great idea. It's about time we take the fight to the cartels, and we need to shut down this. I have a friend who lives over on the Missouri side of for context and perspective, I live in the Kansas City area on the Kansas side of the state line. I'm obviously running for the governor of Kansas. I have to live in the state, and I have for the past 34 years. But just right across the road here, not just down the road, is Missouri. The state line goes right through our part of the geography. And she lives over on the Missouri side. Storm is her name, and Lance, her husband. A beautiful couple, a beautiful conservative Christian couple, have lost 2 sons to fentanyl. And I'm sure I know she's not the only person to suffer those kinds of losses. It's a record loss that we've been seeing these kids. And it just breaks your heart. And it really does. I mean, I'm an Irishman, right? I can get emotional thinking about that. It makes you tear up to a degree when you think about what this epidemic has caused, the pain that it's caused. So, we, again, State Highway Patrol, National Guard, they report into the governor. We will, along with our illegal immigration policies, our child sex trafficking and human trafficking initiatives, we will also have the opioid, now you got me going on it, opioid epidemic in the crosshairs as well. So we'll target that, and we'll begin to make swift changes. And we've already seen it in Kansas. We don't put up with that kind of thing in Kansas. I mean, we do have a communist socialist governor, but at least our legislature is we have a supermajority Republican. Not all of them are rhinos. We have a few rhinos in there, but they've done some good things. And we don't take that lightly, that issue. And when death like that happens, it's tragic. I will say this. We have got to stop the manufacturing of these gummies like they're candy and making the packaging look so much like kids' candy and things like Missouri. They've legalized recreational marijuana, and the packaging of this is just like you're buying gummies for a kid, and a kid gets a hold of that. And the dosages of the THC and so forth, a kid can be killed. And we've got to be real careful about it. I don't care where you fall, pro or con, about recreational. I want to make sure that we're keeping the kids safe. And the opioid epidemic, illegal or not, illegal as it may be, has been enabled to a degree by liberals in office who do not prosecute with extreme prejudice when these kinds of things happen. So there will be no quarter, no safety for people who engage in trafficking those kinds of narcotics, and we will go after them with every available means. And I know I can only, as governor, talk about that and encourage that to be the case. Chris Koba, our Attorney General, will take the KBI and order investigations, and he will prosecute. And I promise you, when he prosecutes, he'll prosecute with extreme prejudice. He already has and has been doing. I'll do what I can with the Kansas Highway Patrol and the National Guard to help seal the borders from that kind of thing. But it's very serious, and it's something that I look forward to making a big difference in the lives of Kansans in those regards.
Our listeners in here now, what's that been like? Do you get to sleep much? How has it been for you?
I missed the first part of your question, Jay. What?
What's campaign life been like for you, Doug?
Yeah. So it's been fun. So it is a lot of work, and your sleep gets affected a little bit. But it's fun. I mean, gosh, it's such an honor to have people come up to you and share their, a part of their life story, a part of why, fentanyl has just devastated their life, and how I could potentially help. It's also good to hear the good stories. I have last weekend I was in Topeka at a question and answer panel with all of the other governor candidates, and I get along with the governor candidates. The difference with our side and the radical Democrat communist socialist side is, by and large, the candidates for governor on the conservative side are good people. They're good people. I think that some of them might do better to be more truly conservative, but they're at the heart of hearts. They're good people. The radical left agenda, these people, I'm sorry, I just can't convince myself. How could you believe in the murder of babies in a mother's womb and be a good person? I just don't get it. How can you believe that a criminal guilty of murder should be let out of jail before, serving a full term? Those kinds of things bother me. So you look at these people, you listen to them, and at the end of the day, I at least am profoundly affected in that I may be blessed with the opportunity to be their governor and to create, I don't know if that's the right word, to begin to instill, to draft policies and laws and agendas that will better their lives, that will make them safer, that will protect what they believe in, and keep away this radical left anti-American sentiment and woke agenda that has really been crippling our republic and our state and our kids, preventing them from being critical thinkers and being truly engaged in learning what the founding fathers intended. That's a high honor for me. And so inevitably, no matter how tired I am at the end of any day or traveling back and forth, that's what motivates me and keeps me going, is just the honesty and the gentleness of the people that come up and they want to know. I have never been approached, like with somebody pointing their finger at my chest or being aggressive in their questioning or or accusatory. They've all been extremely kind, understanding, and genuine in their search to know that I would be different than the establishment choices that they have. And that's what I represent. And I think that's why, certainly in Western Kansas, where the entire portion of that, the rural portion, identifies with this campaign. Every one of the other candidates is already a member of the elected class. They're already in office, and they're just running to be now governor. Well, I'm not. I've never run for office, and I think that's the attraction. I think people don't want the establishment elected class. I think they want the populist, political outsider, the MAGA guy. I think they want that, and that's to our advantage. And as I look at the landscape of this campaign, that's what I see. And I am not a household name. I've got a lot of work to do. And that's why I always ask people, please head over to the website, Doug Billings 4, F-O-R, Kansas.com. Doug Billings 4, Kansas. You don't have to live in Kansas to donate. If you like this, because when I win, my governorship will help every state. Because what people are going to see is Ron DeSantis, Kristi Noem, and Sarah Huckabee Sanders on steroids in front of the TV cameras, talking about these issues on a national level, what we're doing in Kansas. And people in Georgia, people in California, they're going to be going, hey, look, get a load of this guy, Billings, over in Kansas. This is what we need here. Why isn't our governor doing? And I mean, and that's not an ego statement. I'm just saying that's what I will do. And that's the ripple effect of getting an outsider who has passion, conviction, and can speak the truth without worrying about being politically correct. That's what happens when a guy like me gets elected. It has a ripple effect. And I think that's what people in Kansas are recognizing.
And, do you have any events coming up? Where can people kind of meet you and introduce themselves to you? And what's on the horizon for Doug Billings?
Appreciate that. Yeah, we're just getting a calendar completed. We are now in August, so it's 1 year until the primary election. So we've got 360 days until this primary election. We will have a calendar up at Doug Billings 4 Kansas. Again, that's Doug Billings 4, F-O-R, Kansas.com. I'm looking right over here at my other computer screen, and it's being worked on as we speak. There will be, what we're going to do, Jay, is I want to have Trump-like rallies. Now, I admit we're not going to have 30,000 people at the Billings for governor, but we may have a couple of thousand, and we want to have a couple of thousand people at these events. It's going to be part pep rally to talk about the hope that we have in America, and there's going to be tier 1 level patriots from a national perspective coming into Kansas, but there's also going to be Kansas patriots, women like Amy Seipel and Anna Ahrens and Elaine Gephardt, who are nurse practitioners in the state of Kansas, whose licenses were stripped away from them by the Kansas Board of Nursing because they dared to either profess their own personal opinion online or because they forgot to renew their license, but only let it lapse for a couple of days because they were tending to their husband who has cancer. Those kinds of, so their licenses were suspended for non-clinical issues, and where they attempted to remedy those mishaps within 24 to 48 hours, but the Board of Nursing said no. They stripped their licenses. These are good nurses who have been, in a couple of those examples, have been nurses for over 25 years and have never had any mark of discipline on their record at all. But when the Board of Nursing does this, their names are put out in a list and they're marked as unsafe, and so they become unemployable. So the reason I bring this up is because they have spoken at some of the events that I've hosted, and people like Amy and Anna and Elaine will continue to speak at my events. I want Kansas residents to see other Kansans who have faced adversity, challenge, and tragedy and who have overcome, and that how I as governor can help, because that Kansas Board of Nursing is going to be in big trouble when Governor Billings is sworn in. And they're going to be audited and they're going to be held accountable to that kind of tyranny. At the end of the day, it boils down to a radical liberal group on a board punishing conservative nurses for non-clinical issues that have nothing to do with nursing, but all about, and we are not a state that can afford to be just throwing nurses to the curb. So that's an example of what we want to do with our events. Have several guests come and speak, motivate the crowd, educate the crowd. And then we'll have a couple of tier one patriot celebrities from the national level come in and do the same, rally the troops, get them motivated, get involved in your local level. And then I'll speak. In some cases, we'll have a meet and greet. Some cases we'll have dinners. Some cases will just be the rally, and that's it. But all of that will be soon available at Doug Billings FOR Kansas.com. I appreciate you asking that. That's a good question. And it's just now become finalized, and we'll have it up on the website here the next day or two.
Yeah, awesome. Look forward to seeing that. And any last things? I know you got an event coming up tonight. You gotta head out here soon. Any last comments to the voters and to the people watching tonight? We got 1,800 in here right now. So any last comments to them?
Well, thank you, first of all, for being here and listening to this. I would just remind you that this primary election season is so important, and it so often is just such an abysmal turnout. Voters just don't get out and vote in big numbers during primary elections. This is the most, I would say, it's critically important that we engage in a primary election because we want to root out the rhino element from the true conservative movement, the true conservative candidates, the Make America First, the Make Kansas First, whatever state you're in. But we need to be engaged in our primary elections. We need to vote. And I've got messages into President Trump. He's not famous for endorsing primary candidates. He usually waits. We're doing everything we can to get on his radar and try to make that happen. Even though I've met him a few times, it's not easy to get that to happen. So pray for that. Hope that happens. And go over there and donate, even if it's 10, 20, 30 bucks at Doug Billings for Kansas. It helps to demonstrate that we can raise money because people like President Trump, who are businessmen, want to see that. I would like to think the idealist in me, of course, doesn't want to believe that it's all about money, and it's not. It's about ideas, but we need to be able to prove that we're viable financially to the cause. And so I'm not a salesperson. I never have been. I'm a deal maker. I negotiate deals, and it's always tough. But I've learned that you have to make the ask. Please donate at DougBillingsForKansas.com, no matter what amount you can. And it doesn't matter where you live. I will say that the maximum, if you're going to dream, the maximum for an individual is $4,000 in the state of Kansas. If you're a married couple, it's $8,000. So it's not like people can donate millions. So we've got a lot of work to do. We've got to make ourselves become financially viable. But where I want to end, Jay, with this tonight is just to say thank you and to remind people that change like this can affect you no matter where when I win the governorship of the state of Kansas, it will affect people in Georgia and California, Iowa, Missouri, because of what they see. The people will see it and they'll go, we want that too. We want that over here where I live. And it's exactly what happens when you see Ron DeSantis on TV. In some form or fashion, people are going, that's what I want. They're lucky they got him. Or when Kristi Noem was in office, and you mentioned Sarah Huckabee Sanders earlier, when she says things, people go, that's the ripple effect that we need. So that's the benefit I bring other people outside of the state of Kansas. But I'm in this thing for the people of Kansas, for the people of America, for the Republic. And I am just grateful. It's been so much fun. I would have never in a million years imagined myself doing this, but it's a combination of feeling the tap of God's hand on your shoulder saying, I want you over here. And we've just got to get other people than the establishment elected class elected to these positions. We've got to get back to what the founders intended. None of the founding fathers had any political experience. They were all business owners, farmers, lawyers. And so that's where we want to go. That's what we want. That's what we see. And we're feeling good about it. We're feeling really good. I think that whenever we're in a room and I'm allowed to speak, the other candidates are there, we win the room every time, Jay and Kimmy. People, and again, I try real hard. That's not about ego, what I just said. It's just that they want someone who has passion, who's not politically correct, and who just isn't afraid to say things that are really common sense. I'll land there.
Awesome. Well, you guys heard it here. Doug Billings for Kansas, running for Governor of Kansas, I think you'll be the best governor in America. Kimmy and I have said this many times. We're so thankful to have you here tonight. We're so thankful that you took the time to do this, even though you have a busy schedule. You got to run to another event. My gosh, thank God you came in here tonight and talked to us and laid out your plan too. So we're happy to hear it, because it puts wind in people's sails to know that there are good people out there, good people running, and they have really good options moving forward. So we appreciate you, Doug. DougBillingsForKansas.com. Check him out. Like, subscribe, help him out in any way you can. Donate if you're able. Help this guy out, because he's going to be a great governor for America.
Thank you, Jay. Thank you, Kimmy. I love you both. Thanks for doing this for me. I appreciate it.
Of course.
Yeah,
we love you too, Doug. The future governor of Kansas. So,
yeah, we appreciate it.
We will be at your rallies. So we need, just let us know when they're happening, and we will be there.
I will.
Guaranteed. I'll make it out.
All right.
Yeah, I'd love to live stream them too, if we're able to.
That'd be great. Let's do it. That's a good idea for sure. Yep.
For sure. Yeah, like tonight we're live streaming to YouTube and to X, so people can see on both platforms. So, and it's also going to be on Rumble too.
Excellent, you guys. Well, I just can't thank you enough for your friendship, your kindnesses, and the support that you've given me, even before this campaign, but certainly since. And thank you for that. It means the world to me, more than you know.
Yeah, you're welcome here anytime, Doug. We appreciate you.
All right. So long, everybody.
All right. Have a good night, Doug.
Bye-bye.
Well, Kimmy, we had another good show. Doug Billings for Kansas. Fantastic guest. We had Candace Taylor on Friday too. Another fantastic guest. We got a couple other in the hopper coming up in the next few days. So just Liberal Tears on Tap, killing it on these lives. So appreciate you, Kimmy, for helping out, and look forward to doing more of these with you.
Thank you so much. And I want to thank all of the listeners that joined us this evening. We have our loyal ones like Patriot Nola, Stacy, I'm seeing just by the comments, Mark, a lot of people that come to, they're always there for every space, every live, anything that we're doing, they're always there for us. Just want to thank, huge thank you to all of you guys that joined us this evening. Thank you so much.
Yeah, we appreciate you guys, and look for our next stream here on X and on YouTube, and we appreciate everybody coming out, and have a good night.